On Memorial Day 1966, a group of boys fishing in the Westfield River in Springfield, just 5 miles southwest from Chicopee, snagged onto something with their fishing rod. It's needless to say that they thought they had caught a fish. However, once they tried to reel it onto their boat, it quickly became apparent that what had nibbled onto their bait was much heavier than any other fish they had ever caught before. After a great amount of struggle, what they had caught slowly rose to the surface of the river, but what they laid their eyes upon would shock them to the core: the remains of a human body.
56 years since the body of a 10-year-old girl from Chicopee was found in West Springfield, and an arrest has been made in her death.
Sir, how do you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Thank you.
Once the boys had dialed 911 and the body had been brought in for examination, authorities concluded that the 4'7", 75-pound girl who was found dead in the Westfield River could be identified as Betty Lou Zulowski. Her cause of death was determined to have been the result of multiple skull fractures due to being hit with a blunt force object, in addition to terminal drowning. Betty went missing before her murder on the evening of May 26, 1966, having received a phone call from someone she said was a female friend. She left around 6 p.m., but failed to return home that evening, after which her parents, Stanley and Mildred Zulowski, reported her missing to the Chicopee Police Department. The friend's name was later revealed to be fictitious, meaning it was a fake name. The missing persons case was now a homicide investigation, and the Chicopee and West Springfield police departments threw everything they had into trying to solve it. They assigned their entire quota of detectives to the case, as well as involving Massachusetts State Police and the Hampton County District's Attorney Office. Investigators worked on the theory that Betty Lou knew her killer, as she wouldn't have willingly left her house otherwise. Betty Lou's family, friends, and classmates were questioned by the police, who were eager to speak with anyone who had seen Betty Lou the day before she vanished. She must have known the person she had met, they were convinced. They assumed that she met the attacker and traveled to West Springfield in a car driven by a person they knew or by the attacker themselves. The perpetrator, they believed, had killed her and dumped her body in the river. An autopsy confirmed that she very likely was killed on the very same day she went missing. Interestingly, there were no traces of blood found on her clothing when her body was discovered, which is strange considering the brutality of her murder. 1 week after Betty Lou's passing, 2 witnesses came forward and created a composite sketch of a man they saw with her on the night she died. The composite sketch resulted in many tips, but the authorities failed to compile sufficient evidence leading to an arrest. As a result, the case went cold and remained unsolved for many years. When interviewing Betty's friends about potential suspects, they told police about a teenage boy by the name Rolf. He was allegedly described to be 17 or 18 years old, approximately 5'5", and had black hair and black specs. Described as strikingly similar to the police sketch, though authorities lacked sufficient evidence to be able to link him to the crime. No leads, no suspects, and not much of anything that led them to the man responsible. The murder of Betty Lou remained a mystery for years to come. It wasn't until 1997, literally 30 years later, that new information about the case surfaced. A man by the name Donald Mars became a person of interest. At the time of Betty Lou's murder, Mars was 17 years old, and once the Unresolved Case Unit gathered information about his criminal past, including the fact Mars had been convicted of SA in his past, they set their sights on this man who had now become a prime suspect. But just as you, me, and seemingly everybody thought the story would end here, they just couldn't bring forward enough evidence to prove that Donald Mars was the perpetrator. According to the state's online offender registry, Mars in 1995 was convicted on multiple counts of assaulting a child with force and battery on a child under 14 years of age. He's listed as a level 3 offender, meaning he is considered to have the highest risk of reoffending and poses a high degree of danger to the public. Last year, the Cold Case Unit reopened the case investigation. It's not been disclosed what new information led to his arrest, but a 73-year-old man was convicted of first-degree murder after 56 years in connection to Betty's death. He's being held without bond and will appear in court again in May 2023. His name? Donald Mars. Almost identical to the composite sketch. He attended the arraignment via video, and although he didn't say anything, he shook his head several times as the prosecution read a list of past criminal cases that he had been involved in. He comes across as if he thought he had gotten away with it all along. It was just a suppressed memory for him, something he had stored away in the very darkest corner of his mind. What a lot of people pointed out, either as a genuine concern or just for the sake of jokes, is his innocent-looking shirt. Love. How ironic. If that's your attempt of blending in with the rest of society, you failed miserably. But justice was finally served. He's looking at life in prison, though, fortunately, he looks like he doesn't have many years left. In his court footage, the look on his face looks as if he can't render a single thought in his brain, as if he genuinely believes he didn't commit the crime. Mars pretty much didn't say anything in court, but just shook his head instead when they brought up his criminal record. But it begs the question whether the justice system failed Betty Lou or not. Mars got to live under the radar basically for his entire life. Betty Lou's parents died in the 80s, long before his sentencing, but you'd figured he should have been caught earlier, partly because he looks like this guy right here's identical twin. Nevertheless, though it's easy to focus solely on the perpetrator of a crime, it's probably why you clicked on this video to begin with, to be disturbed. Remember that it's far more important to consider what happened to the victim and their family who suffered a devastating loss. Nonetheless, may Betty Lou Zulowski rest in peace, and thank you for watching this episode of Horror Vault.